Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Talk Recovery Radio. Hey, Darren, how are you?
Not too bad. What's going on, everybody?
Hello, hello. Welcome. Talk Recovery Radio comes to you live every Thursday. We usually come to you live from the downtown east side of Vancouver, from Vancouver Co-op Radio Station, 100.5 FM. With the COVID response, the studios at the station are closed. So we are not broadcasting on the radio. They're instead playing repeats. So if you're listening to us on the radio, you're actually hearing last week's Zoom show, and it's policy to broadcast from the internet. Darren, how you dealing with COVID this week?
Monotonous. It's the same old. But I'm feeling pretty good. I've been talking to a lot of people, really enjoying the Zoom meetings online when I can get on, and just doing what I can, getting outside, being a part of the world as much as possible.
These Zoom meetings are definitely changing the environment. So if you're in recovery, you probably noticed that you can't go to church basements right now to do the 12-step meetings or whatever support meetings that you're doing. But really excited that the internet has helped people stay connected through Zoom online meetings. You know, there's so many that are going on, and thank you to all the people that are volunteering their time to organize and host and manage the workings of these Zoom meetings, and it eats up time in your day. So nice round of applause to all you people doing service, putting out the Zoom meetings. Sad anniversary, but it is an anniversary. For those of you that may know already, it's the 4th year anniversary since British Columbia has made the overdose crisis a public health emergency, and the overdose deaths are still happening. Even though we're in a pandemic for COVID-19, addiction is still a pandemic in Canada, not just fentanyl, but addiction. And, you know, a lot of interesting things have happened over the 4 years, and we now have Safe Supply. Who would have thought 4 years ago that that would be something that's been available? So, you know, Darren, you and I, we both lost many friends in the last 4 years.
Yeah. It's devastating. And to think that, you know, it's still going on, and now it never really gained the attention that it deserved, but it seems to be getting less now.
Yeah.
And you know, if we had poor resources or not enough resources already, I can't even imagine, you know, the suffering that's going on, especially in the downtown east side.
Well, Alberta launched $53 million yesterday in a press announcement for addiction mental health support services. That's about 2 times higher than all the other provinces combined for the pandemic. You know, what to do to increase funding for addiction recovery services. Pretty impressed with what's going on in Alberta. Shout out to Premier Jason Kenney for making recovery a priority in that province. Hopefully the rest of the country takes a look at what Alberta is doing too for the recovery community. Talk Recovery comes to you live every Thursday in different formats. We're on Zoom today, powered by New West Recovery, which is made up of Last Door Recovery Society and New Westminster House. Shout out to New West Recovery and all those peeps out there. Thanks for all the support. You can replay our shows on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and at talkrecoveryradio.com. 6 seasons, Darren. High five, Darren. 6 seasons of shows. Don't leave me hanging there, yeah. 6 seasons of shows, hundreds of guests, and all the pathways we try to talk about here. So give us a like, give us a share, give us a shout out. If you want your friends to know about our show, you can send them our link. We try to bring awesome stories to you every week. Excited for this week's show. Darren, who are we talking recovery with today?
Oh man, yeah, this is a great day, great show. Today we get to talk recovery with Brandon Novak. Brandon, oh, there he is. How you doing, man? Can he? Can't hear you yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, not yet. No. Connecting to audio, it says.
Well, we get to see his face.
Yeah,
Brandon Novak, he's just waiting to be connected here.
I believe I'm connected, fellas.
There he is.
There you are. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. This is a big step for me. I'm a 43-year-old man who's always refused to own a laptop, and my employer said, well, because of the state of the nation, it's a must that you have one. So they just sent this to me 5 days ago. I've used it one time prior today, and that was to watch the Libertines documentary, which is my favorite band. So
right on.
Here we go.
Right on.
Well, we're the second group. That's pretty impressive. Right on, Darren.
All right, man. You
Well,
almost broke my virginity. Almost.
Almost.
It sounds like we use the laptops for the same thing. I think, thank God I got one when I did, because I don't know what I'd be doing right now. I guess I'd be on my phone somehow. For those of you guys who don't know, Brandon Novak, professional skateboarder, came up with Tony Hawk, got onto the MTV shows with Bam Margera, part of the Jackass crew. That is an intense beginning for any 13, 14-year-old kid. You were discovered by Tony Hawk at what age?
I was discovered by another professional skateboarder by the name of Bucky Lasek.
Okay, Bucky, yeah.
Big deal, and he. FYI, is this radio? If I cuss, is that okay, or should I refrain from?
It's gonna go on the radio next week. We're a week behind, so.
Okay, so this is FM radio, correct?
Yeah, this is no swearing. Yes.
Okay, got you. That's cool. So I was found by Bucky Lasek, who was also from Baltimore, where I'm born and raised, and he took me under his wing. He had gotten me sponsored by Powell-Peralta, and at that time, Tony Hawk was part of the Bones Brigade. So he, recognized the talent that I possessed at such a young age, and saw a lot of promise, if you will.
Right.
And
so one of the stories was while on tour, I think it was at 17 years old, obviously your antics of whatever shape, was brought to the attention. And was it Tony Hawk that said, look, dude, we'll send you to rehab, or you have to quit the tour? And I guess my question is, it's at 17-year-old, like, were you an addict at that point, like previously to getting involved?
Yeah, the progression of addiction had absolutely began to take place, right? Like my story is not really any different than any other addict or alcoholics as far as how it started and what it looked like when it ended. And it started with herb, and then, some pills and a little bit of cocaine. Well, alcohol initially, herb, cocaine, pills, and then I got into the business of selling weed. Someone owed me a hefty amount of cash, and they gave me heroin, and I just forgot about it. And then one day I remembered it, and I did it, and I liked it. And therefore I was on a tour, a skateboarding tour with a whole bunch of skaters from PAL, and Mike Vallely was the guy who had confronted me and caught me with these drugs. And he said, get rid of the drugs or get off the tour. And as any good alcoholic or addict does, I take the drugs, I throw them down the sewer. We finish the demo. We go back to the hotel. I meet a young lady at the hotel. She drives me back to the sewer. I fish the drugs out. Yeah.
You got to remember what sewer you threw it in.
Absolutely. Yeah. That would not slip my mind.
And
priorities were already in place. But the thing is so I get the drugs, and then he catches me with the drugs, and he kicks me off the tour. Now to this point, I'm a pretty successful individual despite my young age. I did some things in life that people would equate to success, happiness, maybe even dream of doing. I was the first, at the age of 14, I was the first skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade. They would fly me to Chicago, where they made Gatorade at the time at the Quaker Oats building, and they put me on a treadmill. They put Michael Jordan on a treadmill directly next to me, and they strapped these EKGs to our chest and would give us each Gatorade to see the effects that it has on different sports players.
Wow.
Age of 15, I'm touring the world with Tony Hawk. I'm designing my pro model for Powell, and I have a private tutor that flies with. So again, promising career that looks pretty bright. And then at end of 16, 17, I get discovered with a bunch of drugs on me. Valley kicks me off the tour. Then Tony Hawk calls me with that ultimatum. And he says, look, you have two choices you can make here. You can continue to ride for Powell. You go to treatment. You can continue to ride for Powell, save your life, and get things you have no idea that exist in this world. Or you could quit the team. Now, from the age of 7, when my mother gave me that first skateboard, that night when she handed it to me, she put me to bed. She said, Brandon, what would you like me to do with the skateboard? I said, I want it in bed with me. She said, why? And I said, because if I die, I want it to go with me, right? It was like God had came down and handed me the Holy Grail in the form of that skateboard. There was no reason for a plan B, a trait, or an option. A skill that I possessed then that transcended into my drinking and drugging careers that maybe some people can relate to, that despite any and all adverse consequences that came my way, I did what I had to do to get what I wanted to get. Therefore, I knew I was going to be a professional skateboarder. I ate it, I breathed it, I slept it, I dreamt it. At 15, I'm designing my model for Powell-Peralta. Now, at 17, I'm confronted with this ultimatum by my God of my understanding, Mr. Tony Hawk. Go to treatment, save your life, continue to ride for Power, quit the team. And I didn't have a breath of fresh air in my lungs when I said I quit.
No doubt. Which would seem crazy to anybody, but as a junkie myself, it's like, of course, of course, you know,
it's par for the course, man.
Yeah.
And you know, right, hindsight's 2020. I've learned in my process of sobriety that my life is lived forward and learned backwards. So at the time, I could not see or recognize what was happening. But now, you just said it, you alluded to it. I can't deny that the abnormal had already become the normal.
Right.
Right. At such a young age that right, drugs and alcohol did for me. I mean, skateboarding did for me then what drugs and alcohol did for me later. Right. It produced the same effects. You give me that skateboard at the age of 7, you put me in a room with the world's prettiest models. I will not only think that they've been waiting for me, but they're dying to marry me. Right. Drugs and alcohol produce that same effect later on down the life. So I had goals, I had dreams, I had aspirations, I had came from better, I knew better. My mother was a nuclear physicist on the board of Mercy Hospital, recently retired after 53 years of gainful employment, second longest employer in Mercy Hospital history. My brother's an attorney in the White House who practices pensions and benefits. My father died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. He never held a job a day in his life. He taught me one thing, if and when I go to prison, how to conduct myself. And he ran with the Hells Angels. He was a rather unsavory, unruly kind of fella. So therefore, I live with that after-school special of what not to become. And I actually excelled at everything that I did to prove that I would never be my father, because he made me. He didn't make me, but he allowed us to endure some events that no family should endure. Let's just put it that. And then, you know, I became that man.
You talk about your mom, you know, successful professional in her career. And your brother as well, a lawyer. Yeah. And one in your talks, I noticed you saying, in coming back to this idea of how did I get here? Yeah. How did I get here? I mean, you grew up in the same house with, I assume, the same dad as your brother did.
No, I was the only son by my father. My brother and sister are by a different man.
So that question of how did I get here, you can obviously take some form of genetics and influence of from your dad, possibly even the mindset of never being like him, right, you know, leading to being like him, which is a fairly typical story. But does it matter? And did you find out the answer to the question, how did I get here? A lot of people struggle with that. Some don't need to know. Did you need to find that out?
I found it out, but it wasn't like my calling. It wasn't like, okay, this is the task that I'm about to set forth on, and I need to know this answer. Because the reality is, if I figured out the answer, what does it matter? It doesn't change my current circumstance.
Exactly.
So I wasn't that guy, but after finally having done the internal work that it would take for me to not only get sober, but stay sober, which allowed me to have that spiritual experience, right? Again, coming back to what I said before, my life is live forward and learn backwards. I can now look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, AKA coming up on 5 years of continuous sobriety, to see exactly, thank you, brothers, but to see exactly what helped co-create my ending. And what that looked like is I believe I was genetically predisposed. I believe that I possessed the job that consisted of knowing everything. Therefore, when you suggest what I need to do, I suggest why you need to F off, because I know. I continued to walk into establishments that were trying to provide me help with a closed mind and a closed heart. I continued to compare out. You know, I was not buying your Kool-Aid. I was not drinking your Kool-Aid. I was not buying what you were selling.
Yeah.
My father, you know, at the age of 7, he would take me to the strip joint. And when he was in the back conducting business, they would sit me at the stool. And the pretty dancing girls would pour shots of ginger ale and Coca-Cola into the shot glasses. I would do the shots. The girls would dance around me, and my father would give me that look of approval. So it could be several things, but the reality is, it is what it is.
Sure.
So Darren, 1 second. So you get clean in 2015, but there's a story. 7 rehab centers.
13.
How many? 13?
Yeah.
13 rehab centers. Yes. Multiple attempts. Some people, would you consider, let's talk about the treatment centers for a second, because a lot of people, you're either on the harm reduction camp or you're on the recovery camp. And then there's a few that are in the middle, and I don't care what anybody says, there's camps out there. Would you, like, what went, because some people say treatment doesn't work. You went to 13. So were they all failures? Were they stepping stones? What's your take on that? Like, why did you have to go to treatment 13 times?
There's a saying, a hard head makes for a soft ass. And my ass is like made of rubber, right? Paired with the fact that I possessed that job that consisted of knowing everything. And after all, my resume stated that I had known some things, right? New York Times top 10 selling author. I had been in movies that broke box office records, TV shows that were wildly successful, former professional skateboarder, right? I had did some things in life that proved to me that I was no fool by any means. But I was almost too smart for my own good. And my best friend, Bam, right? Bam Margera from Jackass, he came to me one day when I was in my last treatment center, and he wrote me, and he said, what's different? What's different from treatment center number 13 as opposed to 8, 6, 9, 1? What is it? And I said, the reality is, I didn't really learn much of anything different from 1 to 7 to 12 to 15. It's not like they had this secret formula that they were waiting to give to me once I got to this great treatment center. The fact is that usually the only thing that motivates any form of change in my life is a direct result of pain. I don't change when things are unmanageable. I change when things are unbearable. And you caught me at 35 years old. I'm a homeless heroin addict who resides on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park, allowing men to perform sexual acts on me just to secure enough money to buy another bag of heroin. My worldly possessions consist of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant. It fits into a bag that doubles as my pillow, a needle, a spoon, a restraining order that my mother just had served on her 35-year-old son to vacate her premises. I had been to 12 inpatient treatment centers, lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother had bought me a plot. People had taken life insurance policies out on me. I had just woken up from being on life support for 7 days. Medevac 4 different hospitals from 4 different states and 4 different overdoses. My mother had sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers. At the end of my run, she had nothing left to give, so she went to God and said, God, please cure him, kill him, or kill me. I can't take it anymore. I'm now the kind of alcoholic that wants to kill himself on a daily basis, but I don't want to hurt myself in the process. I'm horrible at suicide because I keep waking up, and I'm in a position in life where I'm so low the curve looks like a skyscraper. And the worst thing happened that had ever happened in my life. The heroin stopped working. It literally stopped working. I remember being in my mother's bedroom, which I physically ejected her from and made her sleep on the sofa in the living room as I stayed in her bedroom and turned that room into a shooting gallery. And I would go out every morning. I'd buy $180 worth of heroin and cocaine. And I would load that thing up and put it in my syringe and put it in me. And I literally could not add another drop of water or the plunger would come out. And prior to that, it was okay because every time I called, it answered, meaning I put that injection in me immediately. It allows me to escape the reality that I, Brandon Novak, have created for myself. Therefore, no matter how bad my situation was, put that heroin in me, I escaped my reality. Now it's love and war. You know what I mean? It's just par for the course. I can actually find some entertainment and amusement in it, right? But now at 35, the heroin no longer works. Meaning, every time I put that shot in me, I cannot escape my reality. Meaning that moment of clarity is 24/7, high or sober. What do you do? What do I do?
Yeah, you're in this torturous game, that's for sure. Would you agree at this point then you finally get to realize addiction's not just about drugs, it's about perspective in life, and it's about like the drugs really, it's just, that's just part of it, but it doesn't matter what the drugs are. It's if it's, prescription drugs, safe drugs, illegal drugs, like there's a lifestyle that I'm addicted to fighting with my mom, addicted to stealing things, like the chaos of it all.
It's actually ironic and quite funny that you say that, because now that I think about it, to be quite honest with you, addiction is because of drugs and it's kind of created and caused by drugs and alcohol, the term for it. But addiction really has nothing to do with drugs. Nothing. Right?
I totally agree. Yes.
I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. Guess what? That is not my problem. That's actually the exact opposite of my problem. The heroin, the cocaine, the Xanax, the wine, that's not my problem. Nothing to do with my problem. It's actually the exact opposite. It is the solution to my problem. What my problem is rests between these two ears of mine, my thinking, my attitude, and my behavior. And merely the heroin is simply the solution to this thing because it never shuts up, which is my brain.
Yeah. And you're describing the difficulty of getting clean. Yeah. As soon as I've stopped using dope, and I'm a couple of days clean, I'm just the guy that needs and wants dope.
I need the solution. I'm like a stranger in my own skin trying to figure out who the hell let me in and why.
Yeah. And a guy like me, like 13 treatment centers, I can relate to that. Like, I remember when it was just first treatment center, my attitude was like, shut the F up, man. Yeah. Like, you don't know me.
Yeah.
You are the typical dope fiend. I'm not. Yeah. And that just in every treatment center, basically. But I have a hard time when I see somebody walk into a meeting or trying to ask for help and they've never asked for help before, because I want to tell them, you got to go through a whole bunch more hardship. You got to come in and out. Like, what's your message to somebody that's brand new, never attempted to stop using? Like, how does your message now relate to them?
Well, it's funny because, knowing the power of addiction and alcoholism and what it does to our brain, right? It talks to us in our own voice and it makes us believe these unbelievable things that are not true. I understand and I respect the power of it. So I also know that someone who's not been in 13 treatment centers, who's maybe just about to enter their first treatment center, they'll use my story and they'll deflect or justify why their story isn't as bad. And I don't need this because I'm not you. How do I know that? Because I did it in my first treatment center. I get it, right? So I'm really good at playing devil's advocate, but it comes down to, I debated for a lot of years and I shot heroin for a lot of years. And it's something that I've now had this newfound spiritual experience where I believe God is everything. And one of my favorite things is like, where's my spirituality if I'm judging your spirituality? You know what I mean? So there's unfortunately, addiction is not a black and white, one size fits all. If it was, and there was a guideline or an instruction manual that came with this, I don't think we'd be in the pandemic that we are. So what I do is a case by case, and I never talk to them or at them, but simply with them. And a lot of times I don't say a word. I just let them talk, because ultimately what I'm doing is I'm allowing them to throw up all over me. And then I just use all the things that they've told me from their mouth and their own voice as ammunition as to why I'm right, right? Because they don't realize what they're saying. And number two, I meet them where they're at, not where I believe they should be or where I think they're expected to go. And we meet on a common ground, and I share with them my story. I don't tell them about them, because here it is. When I say that I'm Brandon, I'm an alcoholic, all that means is I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority, and I will never conform unless it becomes my idea.
Just to let our listeners know, you now, obviously, you probably sponsor people and you're giving back, doing service. You also work in a treatment center. Just, that's where you're helping people and so forth. Do people recognize you right away? Like are people, what's it like to be in recovery with the past? A lot of people show up to recovery with this false persona. I'm a drug dealer. I'm a gangster. I'm a thug. I'm more popular than than you actually have some stardom and you got a resume. How does that play? Like, is it hard to have humility in recovery? Is it?
It's funny that you say that, because even with me having this resume of being an accomplished individual, I too suffered with that same deal, where in the beginning, treatment center number 1, 2, 3, I was the Brad Pitt of the world, right? And I'm like, not that guy, never was at that level, but in my mind, I was, right? So I went through that. And then I went through the phase where like everything was external. Right. I wouldn't go into a treatment center and share with you how I really felt, because like, I need you to view me a certain way. I need you to think a certain thing of me. I need you to want to sleep with me, whatever my motive was. But everything was external. So I would go into these facilities and I would save my face, and I would literally leave and lose my ass on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park to get another bag. Like, no pun intended, like, for real. So what happened was, and then I went through the phase of like, well, and I was right sometimes, right? And this was true, but it messed with me for a while, is that if I went into a facility and I told them about like things that got under my skin, my day to day, and who it entailed and what I was doing, I think that they think that I think I'm the man, right? And that's not me. Like, I had a really low self-esteem, as any addict, alcoholic does, and blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't share with groups, people, because I thought that they thought that I think that I'm the man, when really I'm a people pleaser. I hate confrontation. I'll do anything. And so that held me back for a long time. And then again, coming back to where we started, the only motivating factor that dictates any form of change in my life is pain. When the pain became great enough, I went in there and I was willing to follow any suggestion you said. And what happened was, I sat in those chairs and I told people where I was at, what I was doing, how I was thinking, because the stakes were too high, right? The heroin stopped working, the cocaine, the you name it, it stopped working. I'm left with myself. I hate myself. I want to kill myself, but I don't want to hurt myself in the process. I don't have my solution anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't show up. I'm 35 years old. I'm homeless. All I have is a restraining order, a needle, a spoon, and 8 scarves. How did I get here? And I remember I was in this place. So I went to a 90-day treatment center, and it was a state-run facility. It cost me $3 to get into. As my disease progressed, so did my treatment center stays, right? Like, in the beginning, I had the 4-star aromatherapy, acupuncture, chef, and at the end, I'm paying $3 to get into a state-ran facility, like, straight up. And I remember I stayed in there and I completed it. And I had this willingness, unlike anything that I had ever experienced, because I had that spiritual experience, and God did for me what I couldn't do for myself, which was rid me of that obsession and rid me of the desire to drink and drug. There's no human power could ever do that. I tried for a lot of years.
And how did you get in that treatment center? Did you just show up, or did you have a sponsor?
My parole officer.
Your parole officer. Okay.
Yeah, she granted me one more chance of mercy. So, but then when I complete that, then I go to this other 6-month program. But I got kicked out after 4 days for smoking in my bedroom, right? And it wasn't that I was trying, I used to smoke. I'm now coming up on 2 years cigarette free, but it wasn't because I was about breaking rules and I was lazy and wanted to smoke in my room. It was like, no, the stakes were too high. I didn't want to go smoke with everyone else because I didn't want to answer questions about, is he funny? Was that real? Is this dude cool? Like, if it didn't pertain to recovery and me saving my life, I had no time for it,
Wow.
So
you get to that place where there's a change. And when you do end up in that place where there's a change, you want people in recovery around you, because I don't know about you, but addiction is contagious. People say recovery is contagious. So is addiction. If I'm around a lot of addiction, I'm living in addiction. If I'm around a lot of recovery, I'm going to be living around a lot of recovery. There's a doctor's named Dr. David Best, who does a lot of research out there about the contagion of recovery and so forth. So for all our listeners that are listening to us on Zoom Live, or if you're on the radio, you're listening to us on 100.5 FM. We're talking to Mr. Brandon Novak. Hello. And Darren, co-host Talk Recovery Radio, coming to you live every Thursday.
I'm just thinking, like, we've talked to some people with some notoriety, and
6 seasons of shows.
Yeah, right. Like, talking about their story is this life once lived, typically huge loss financially, spiritually, the notoriety itself, being somebody that's entertaining and like sort of looked up to, by a generation of young people. That has always been and will always be who you are. Does that help you today in a different way reach out to young people? Are you in a lot of contact with young people? Are they asking for help, or do they just want to hear the stories and whatnot?
Great question, man. And 100%. And one of my things that I really try to impress upon people, and this goes for everybody in every walk of life. If you choose to change your perspective, you can change your world, right? And I always say that your past does not have to dictate your future, but it can most certainly guide and direct it if you play your cards right. And yes, it has. I believe, right? I'm not religious, but I'm as spiritual as one can get. And I believe that my higher power is to be accredited for everything. I believe that the God of my understanding has taken me down these roads and on these different journeys. Each one has a different season and a different reason. And I believe that I'm here today currently to play the part that he's assigned me, the role, right? Which is by all means, I should have been dead years ago, right? 13 treatment centers, lost count of outpatients and detoxes. Mother's brought me a plot, life insurance policies, life support, medevac, 4 different hospitals, 4 different states, Narcan on more fingers and toes than probably all of us on this together combined. And I believe, statistics state theoretical evidence dictates that I am to be high or dead right now. And the fact that I'm not is A, miraculous, equaling it's a miracle only that can be provided by my God. And 2, it defies logic. So I believe he brought me through that to do what I do now, which is I use the platform that I had gained through the skateboarding, through the books, through the Jackass stuff, which, is fairly significant depending upon who you ask. And I use that as a direct line of communication for people that want to, better their lives, that are suffering with addiction. And I use that platform to give them my personal phone number to call me and my team if you need help. Because I believe my sponsor, when he told me in the beginning that my defects could become my assets with a shift of perception. I told you, addicts and alcoholics, we're defiant by nature. We hate authority. We'll never conform because we possess that job that consists of knowing everything. Tell me what I need to do. I tell you I need to get out of here. So what I do is I deliver a whole package, if you will, throughout my social media, my talks, my life, in a form of attraction rather than a promotion. I make it very appealing, very attractive. You want to make love to it, is what I think. And then, so what happens is these kids, they call me and they say, if Novak can do it, my message holds strength and weight. You can see it in the books. You can read it in the tabloids, on the internet. If he can do it, then I can do it. Now the terms of their contract have changed, and I believe you can relate. When it becomes our idea, we excel at a rapid pace and can be a billboard for any treatment center. But it has to be our idea. So if I can present this in a form of attraction rather than promotion.
It's all about buy-in. It's all about buying in and buying in and buying in.
It's the whole sleight of hand card trick thing, man. It really is.
You have to be accepting of the fact of putting your dirt out there, which I think for a lot of people, they're, in the realm of anonymity and all of that, however you define it, like nobody wants to put their dirt out there. It's the shame, it's the guilt, it's the regrets. But I mean, I guess it's better when there's a part of the story that's recovery, that's made change, that's insight, perspective changes. You know, it sort of justifies all the dirt being out there. Was that a hard part for you to get into that change? Was like worrying about, you know, everything sort of coming out? Like, I don't want to disrespect your friend Bam, and we don't need to talk about him personally, but you know, the last time I saw something, it was just, you know, you don't see the recovery version yet. And,
No.
and it's hard. And as someone that can relate, it's sad. And, you know that there's family and friends suffering. And did you go through that at all? And did it help you, you know, get inspired?
It, you know, as fate would have it, you know, no, because like prior to sobriety recovery, you know, being a professional skateboarder, right, or just being a skateboarder in general, you know, I believe that being a skateboarder alone weeds out the quitters in life, right? So that right there does that. Number two, ending up in those Jackass and Viva La Bam shows, the more outrageous I became, the more outlandish my antics were, the higher in demand I was, the bigger paychecks I got. So I was already used to just like being above, beyond, and extra. And then you take into consideration, I wrote Dream Seller while I was drinking copious amounts of wine and sniffing endless amounts of cocaine, which was a tell-all book of my life and the things that will be on most people's fourth steps that they don't want anyone to know. I literally was an open book. You know, I went on Howard Stern and out of my mind and licked Richard Christie's anus as he had a hemorrhoid, and it got like the second highest ratings of his thing. So like I was never a person that was ashamed, or actually the more outrageous it was, the stoked I was. Like, bring it on.
It built your identity and made it a part of that. I get it. Now, when you think about, okay, things that do feel a sense of shame, perhaps
there's like a few acts, like one or two or three that I've done that I really wish that I could have taken back. Yes.
And you know, one of your in your conversations, it was about, you know, your mom and my mom said the same thing. She hit a wall where it was like, I wished he would just pass.
Yeah.
So I don't have to suffer another day. And I mean, I think of that today, and I think that should always be a regret for me. That should always come with a sense of shame. And, you know, sometimes I hear messages like, you know, no shame, I'm free from guilt, I'm free from regret. Like, do you believe that to be true? Or do you believe that there's a sense of regret and shame that on a positive with spirituality motivates us to keep going?
You know, again, coming back to like, where's my spirituality if I'm judging your spirituality? Believing me that I believe everything is of a creation of my God, right? So I think everyone's exactly where they're supposed to be, doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're on their path. I might not agree with it, but you know, it's like, you know, no shame, no whatever. You know, I hear people in the room saying, I worked real hard for this seat, right? And my mind tells me, no, you didn't. No, you didn't at all. You know who worked hard for that seat? Your mother, your father, your employer. Yeah. If justice was due, I'd be dead years ago. I'm on borrowed time here. That's just my own thing, though, right? Yeah. So there's one thing that I would absolutely take back, and that's the pain that I've caused my loved ones, and followed by the sleepless nights. You know, they didn't deserve it. They didn't ask for it. And it was totally unwarranted. And I wish I could take that back. But with that being said, everything else I would not change for the life of me. Because what happened was, I remember showing up in that 13th treatment center, and I'm standing before my therapist, who I had seen 4 previous times at the 4 previous attempts at the same facility. And I'm standing before her, and I got the clothes on my back, and I got my worldly belongings in that bag. There's no word in the English dictionary that could properly suffice to how bad I felt. Hopeless, helpless, like dismal, dark, drab, doom. And she said to me, she said, if you play your cards right, today could be the best day of your life. And I looked at her, I said, Christina, do you need a urinalysis? You know who I am, you know what I'm capable of. And she said, I promise you, play your cards right. Today could be the best day. Life, live forward, learn backwards.
Yeah.
Looking back now, May 25th, 2015, which I thought was the end all be all, has turned out to be the best day of my life on this planet in 43 years of existence. It surpasses Jackass, TV, skateboarding, family. That day has given me life. And I couldn't see, I was incapable of seeing it at the time because I was so caught up in, you know.
And that is recovery. It's like the sad part is we can't implant that philosophy or perception in somebody who's still using or their first day clean. I mean, if we could, it'd be amazing, but maybe that's just the way life is. We have to earn, this opportunity to see life the way that you're seeing life, the way that we're seeing life. I say that to, I work in a treatment center. I say that to our new guys all the time. This could be the best summer of your life, or it could be the worst. Like, it's really your choice, and it's nothing else. It's your choice to make that decision just for today, to live in the moment and be happy. So we have a lot of viewers, moms, dads, a lot of people in recovery. I want to focus on people that the families that are out there right now. I saw some videos with your mom. I already love your mom. You're the brat. We're all just these little brats. I was talking to a mom a long time ago, and she's been on the show, and she said, my son's addiction, he's passed away, unfortunately, now. And there was a conversation on how addiction is like a tornado, and you're really afraid that the tornado's coming, but once the tornado's gone, you rebuild your life. And his addiction was a tornado, and now, the tornado's passed, and she can, move on in life and have some closure. 13 treatment centers, throwing your mom out of her bedroom, you said earlier. Obviously, there were some fights there. What suggestions do you have, when you talk about enabling, codependency, loving from a distance? Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? What do you tell moms and dads?
Well, see, that's the thing, right? In this world of harm reduction and advocacy, if you will, there's no margin for error, yet it is impossible to do perfect, right? Because addiction is a case-by-case situation and scenario. If it came with a instruction manual, we wouldn't be in this, right? Okay, you take this pill, you do this, read this book, and good knowing you, right? That's not the case. So what I know is my experience and what worked for me, and God knows, I tried everything known to man. And when I got to my last facility and I ended up in AA, I didn't even want to be there. I just had nowhere else to be, and no one else was waiting for me, right? I had nothing. And I pride myself on being an outside of the box thinker, right? Like I moved to Finland, I moved to London, I moved to Paris, I moved all over the United States. I changed women, homes, and careers, all in hopes to drink successfully, shoot dope successfully without any repercussions. And then a lot of those days I didn't want to do it, but I just didn't have the ability to not do it, because the disease from which I possess, when that thing says jump, I say, yes, sir, how high? And anything, unfortunately, in between me and that next one must and will go. And it's not personal. It's just business. It's just par for the course of the game that I play. I don't want to do it, but I don't have the option not to do it. And I get that. So what I can tell you that worked for me was at the age of 18, right? I walked back into my mother's home, the woman who had always been there for me. And a common theme in my story is that lock stopped working, right? And I go to put the key in the lock, and it's this big glass door. And for the first time, it doesn't open. And she's standing on the other side. She's crying uncontrollably. If you would ask me at that point in that time, when she said, no longer can you be here, son, you have to go. And I had that talk a few times in my life with her, unfortunately. But if you would have asked me then, I would have said, my mother is the most unhuman, sick, perverse woman that I've ever met. She should be incarcerated, if not killed, for turning her back on her only son. And I assure you, she felt the same way as pain goes, right? That was not what she wanted. She didn't sign up to have to do that. I put her in that position. But looking back, that was one of the best things that she had ever done for me. right? Because now I'm back out there and I'm starting to get some repercussions from my actions, right? Taking accountability for what I'm doing and what I'm creating. And all of a sudden, shooting dope wasn't so fun when I had to like figure out which porch I'm going to sleep under and what rug that some neighbor's going to put out after they're done taking it out of their house that I can use as a blanket, even though it's dripping wet because it rained. Like then I start to realize like, maybe I bargained for a little bit more than I could handle. That accompanied with like healthy boundaries, right? Say what you mean what you say. I believe, and this is opinionated, fact-based due to my life only, right? But it is a case by case that if you baby an addict, you will bury an addict. And it's a real fine line to go from love to loving to enabling or justifying, you know, but there's support groups, right? There's Al-Anon groups for those people that
Did your mom go to Al-Anon?
She attempted several. Yeah, she did. But
So
she got
you said something, you baby an addict, you bury an addict. So, you know, obviously I wouldn't call a total stranger on the street a junkie, but you're a down and out heroin, drug addict, junkie, doing what you're doing at the park that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So you're from Baltimore, living in Baltimore area. You're close to Philadelphia. Philadelphia was just in Vancouver a couple months ago, the mayor, and there's this big argument about a consumption site in Philadelphia. You know, it's really made national news. And
that's why I live now. I'm here
people
now.
Against it. And so we just passed in Vancouver safe supplies. So if you're addicted to heroin or crystal meth, you can get prescription crystal meth and heroin alternatives.
Wow.
So what do you think about that? Being, you know, some people I know in recovery get the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. Like we're doing it here now. Eventually it's going to make its way around North America. Do you think your life story would be different if you had access to free prescription drugs?
I do. Yeah. It's unrealistic for me to say no that it wouldn't. I can't predict how my outcome would have turned out. Right? I'm not a psychic.
What ifs, yeah.
But it would have changed for one of two ways. But again, where's my spirituality from judging your spirituality? That concept, right? I know what I can say about other things. This is the first time I've been proposed with that, and that's I'm a big fan of doing something, right? Because right now, what we're at 172 people today in the nation will die as a direct result of just an opioid overdose. That's not like the meth, it's not alcohol, not benzos, just opioids. 1 out of 3 people will be affected. It's the #1 human casualty. It's worse than the peak of the AIDS outbreak and the Vietnam War.
And coronavirus.
Yeah, right, exactly. So with that being said, I'm a big fan of whatever works for whatever individual that's doing it, right? Like if you think 180 milligrams of methadone every day provides you a life that you believe is worth waking up for, opening your eyes and get out of bed, who am I to say that's not the right way to do it, right? If I had the guide to life, I'd bottle that thing up. I'd sell it to be a billionaire 1 billion times over. And at the very least, for those harm reduction drugs, Suboxone, Subutex, Vivitrol, the implant, methadone, at the very least, if you choose to come off it, and I'm assuming the same now that I'm thinking about it with the pharmaceutical aspect that you guys are talking about, the regulated, safe narcotics, that they're not cut with fentanyl. You're not playing the Russian roulette to die. It's it's the same thing as so yes, I am a fan, because the same thing is like the methadone and the Suboxone, that at the very least, if and when you're ready to come off, we'll still have you alive to be able to do so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at harm reduction here. This isn't like, that's where we're at. Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
So they were going to do this safe injection site in Philly, right? And I live in Philly. I'm next to Kensington. I'm here now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I live right next to like the Liberty Bell, Betsy Ross' house. Betsy Ross is
I love Philadelphia. I went to the World Convention on Narcotics Anonymous a few years ago in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
That market across the street from the convention center is like, I dream about the food that I ate in there. And there was 30,000 drug addicts in Philadelphia. we're just enjoying the city. It was a highlight for sure. I'll never forget it. And I remember the mayor of Philadelphia, who's probably a different mayor now, was there at the time and just did the opening and just how this city embraced recovery. It was a pretty powerful weekend when I was there. So is the consumption site open yet in Philly?
No, it was about to, and then they called it back. They walked it back, and I think because of the coronavirus, it's kind of taken a back seat, at least.
Oh, yeah.
So I haven't seen as much about it. But my thought to that was, they're like, we don't want it in this neighborhood because, like, what if, like, people, experiment? My mother, right, is not going to walk out her house, walk past a safe injection site, and go, I think I want to try to shoot heroin today. That's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. But again, I haven't been confronted with that because they haven't tried to put it in my neighborhood where I just bought a home, right? So, like, I understand the different perspectives for different motives.
Well,
like,
I know the kind of dope fiend that I am. I know for sure if that was an option back when I got clean, I'd probably still be milking it today. That's just
full disclosure here. This guy right here showed up to rehab with drugs in his shoes. So
as he should.
What else are you gonna do in rehab?
There was not a treatment center I went to without dope. That was my safety. That's how I was gonna get through treatment.
Yeah, because I can't trust them to detox me properly. I know how I'm best detoxed.
The taper. Yeah, the one-use taper. One use all gone. Yeah. But,
we got 10 minutes left here. Darren, looks like you got a question. I want to talk about some future projects that you're working on, Darren.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk. I mean, our viewership, being from Vancouver, it's great, but I know, and I get sort of feedback on a daily, and then with someone like, yourself, Brandon, I'm hoping our viewership reaches the people in your community. You're with Banyan Treatment Center, community outreach coordinator. And I just tell us a little bit about the Roots to Recovery Scholarship, because that sounds like something that a lot, even around here, can work. This is something that's going to help people without funding treatment, eh?
I mean, because I believe, well, it's a little different in Canada as far as you guys in insurance, I believe.
No, we got the treatment's private in Canada.
Oh, okay. So if you're like me, and I'm guessing you, at the end, we don't have the ways and means, the funds, or the good insurance to get into those, aromatherapy, private chef facilities.
Like
horse. Yeah. So, I understand that. I understand that people don't go to treatment because they have an influx of money. That's very unrealistic. So what we do is we have this Roots to Recovery, and each month we because there has to be some willingness, some form of desire. I'm not a fan of giving scholarships out. People, hey, do you have a scholarship? No, because I never went to treatment on a scholarship. That's my experience, right? So I'm not the guy who like, oh yeah, let's pamper you. I believe that you have to show some willingness. So with that being said, you write like a essay, a little tutorial, a story of why you're in need and you deserve a full treatment stay, a full-length treatment stay. And each month we pick out a new participant who we award that scholarship to. And
one a month.
Yeah, one a month.
How many essays are you seeing come in?
Oh, tons. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon your perception, good or bad, we get tons and tons of people that want to do it. And I also, and my team, there's facilities that I work with that give me a discounted rate, and really work. So there's ways to find people the help that they need. Unfortunately, I get a lot of calls from Vancouver. Not unfortunately, but I get a lot of calls from Vancouver of people that want help. And obviously, as you know, your insurance isn't, so I don't have, unless it's like a cash pay, I don't really have any resources for you guys when you call. But it's weird. I get an influx of calls from Canada.
Well, you can always send those calls to Last Door Recovery Society, the producers of the radio show. Brought to you by New West Recovery. Shout out to Westminster House for Women as well. Talk Recovery Radio comes to you live every Thursday, and we're doing Zoom live right now during the COVID-19 response. And a special shout out to Kimmett at the radio station, who is going to rebroadcast this next Thursday. on 100.5 FM. You know, if you get an opportunity and you ever come visit Vancouver, I don't know about this year, but we're still planning Recovery Day BC. This year, I think it's on September 5th. And this is our 4th year doing it in our community. We're expecting 40,000 people. So
Wow.
hopefully physical distancing is over by then, so we can have Recovery Day again. It'd be great to have you down here, and maybe even do a talk. We do a speaker tent as well and all that kind of stuff. So we'll keep in touch. Darren, any final thoughts?
Hey man, thanks for coming on the show, sharing your story. Anything you got coming up that people can stay in tune with?
Yeah, I have. I mean, if you're interested in anything that I've just talked about, me or where I'm going, where I'm headed, what I'll do when I get there, you can find everything at brandonnovak.com. That's all one word, and that kind of encapsulates everything that I have going on. It'll take you down all the different rabbit holes. The sequel to my first book, Dream Seller, goes to print this Monday. It will be out 3 weeks prior to Monday. I'm very excited for that. I released the first ever addiction graphic novel, a documentary, a lot of things going on. So you just go to brandonnovak.com, all one word, and you can see it. And last but not least, if anyone it finds themselves in a position that they can't get out of on their own and they need help, they can call me directly at 610-635-9092. I'll take you directly to this phone, which is sitting right here in front of me, and
That's
we
awesome.
do the best that we can to not only find you the help that you need, but more so deserve.
Wow, glad you changed your life and are making yourself available to that sort of, to that realm, because a lot of people that have gotten clean and found ways that they sort of keep it to themselves, man. And big ups to you for being available like that. That's really cool. That's inspiring.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
Recover Out Loud. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us.
God bless, fellas.
Take care.
Thanks, Novak.
Okay, bye, Darren. Bye, everybody. Take care. See you next Thursday.
We good? Cool, man. Thanks.
Thanks, dude.
Take care. Cheers.
Do.